Hello, my name is Nakamura. I'm an associate professor of Faculty of Economics in Fukuoka University in Japan. I focus on this research with one of my colleagues, Sumitha Dev. She belongs to the Faculty of Psychology in Abu Dhabi University. Today, I would like to introduce effects on class size reduction on students' performance from economic aspect theoretically. Let's move on to the next page. There are two motivations of this research. First, we theoretically clarify the mechanism of students' performance by class size reduction. A lot of previous studies focused on the effects of class size reduction and showed its positive impacts. However, most of them are indicated empirically, and the mechanism of effects of class size reduction on students' performance is still unclear. Therefore, we focus on that. Second, we examine the optimal class size with time by considering benefits and costs of class size reduction. This is one of the standard analyses in economic fields, and we adopt it. Let's check the previous studies briefly. First, class size reduction analyzes good relationship between teachers and parents and let school staff obtain supports from individual families. Second, class size reduction contributes to reduce the achievement gap among students. Third, class size reduction promotes students' attitude, individualization, and participation. Fourth, class size reduction affects academic performance, especially for Black students. Fifth, class size reduction affects academic performance, especially for poor and minority students. Sixth, class size reduction shows positive effects on students' achievement, particularly in the early primary grades. Seventh, higher ability students benefited more from class size reduction. Eighth, class size reduction realizes increasing enrollment among Black students and students from low-income families. These are all empirical studies. A few theoretical studies also showed that positive impacts of class size reduction. For example, Laser focused on the peer group effects in the classroom and shows that class size reduction strengthens the effect of students' earnestness toward studying on students' academic performance. According to the human capital theory stated by Becker, 1964, we assume that individuals accumulate their own human capital through education. And accumulated human capital can be shown by students' academic performance. In order to clarify the mechanism by which class size reduction affects each student's performance, and to find the optimal class size for various students, this research uses a simple model based on that of Laser, which was introduced in the previous page. Through our model, we indicated three propositions. First, class size reduction can be effective, especially for students who are in the early elementary grades. This result matches the findings in the previous empirical studies. Second, class size reduction can be effective for those who have poor learning environments. Third, the optimal class size is small while introducing the policy, and the class size grows larger with time. Let's check the model. First, we assume that The maximal value of human capital of individual I acquired through education is written as equation 1. A is an exogenous variable. Theta I is the individual's ability to understand teaching. Theta upper bar is the average level of students' ability to understand teaching in a classroom. And EI is the level of individual learning environments, such as the amount of provision of school supplies from family or parents' perception and attention towards their children's learning needs. Whether human capital can be maximized or not depends on the individual earnestness. That is, human capital per student acquired by education is shown as equation 2. PI is the level of an individual earnestness towards studying. P upper bar is the average level of earnestness in the classroom. N is the number of students in the classroom. Equation 2 clarifies that the average level of earnestness in the classroom affects individual human capital because the effect of peer group on academic performance is observed in the classroom. When the average level of earnestness towards studying in the classroom is higher than a student's earnestness towards studying, the student's earnestness increases and vice versa. Moreover, when an individual ability to understand teaching gets closer to the average level of understanding in the classroom, individual human capital increases because the level of teaching and teaching style usually focus on the level of a student whose ability and average in the classroom. Next, we consider the benefits from education. The operating cost of a classroom, such as the salary of a teacher, and the cost of installing equipment for learning, such as a blackboard or air conditioners, is W, and the cost is paid by students in the classroom. The benefits from education per student, pi I, is shown as equation 3. From equation 3, we can observe that the value of benefits through education per student becomes the increasing function of EI and PI, whereas it is the decreasing function of W. That is, individual learning environments and individual earnestness towards studying are the factors that boost the benefit through education, whereas the operation cost decreases the value of benefits. Let us consider an optimal class size. The first order condition of equation 3 for n is shown as equation 4. From equation 4, we obtain the optimal class size as equation 5. From equation 3 and 4, it is found that the value of n increases when the value of p increases and vice versa. Therefore, the higher the student's earnestness toward study, the larger the optimal class size becomes. Moreover, we observe that n is the increasing function of w, whereas n is the decreasing function of vi from equation 5. That is, the more individual learning environments increases, the smaller the optimal class size becomes. In addition, the optimal class size becomes smaller when the deviation of individual ability to understand from the average level in the classroom is small. In contrast, the higher the operating cost, the larger the optimal class size becomes. Next, we examine the benefits from education and the transition of the optimal class size. For simplicity, we assume that students receive education for 2 periods. The benefits from education can be written as equation 6. Delta is the discounted present value, and pi ji, vji, pji, and theta ji indicate the benefits from education, human capital, honestness toward studying, and the ability to understand teaching of individual I in period J, respectively. The range of theta I is small in the early elementary grades because the accumulation of knowledge is less at the elementary level, and study contents is easy to understand. On the contrary, the content will increase and become more advanced during late elementary grades. Therefore, the deviation of individual ability to understand from the average classroom is narrow in lower grades, whereas it is large in higher grades. That is, equation 7 is satisfied. Let's introduce the optimal class size for 2 periods. The first order condition of equation 6 for n is shown as equation 8. When the class size for 2 periods is decided before the first period and not changed, from equation 8, we obtain the optimal class size through 2 periods as equation 9. From equation 5 and 9, we can obtain the relationship that the value of n star is larger than the value of n double star, as long as the equation 10 is satisfied. This means that the optimal class size becomes smaller as long as individual learning environments and honestness toward studying improved by class size reduction, and vice versa. Through our model, we obtain 3 propositions. Proposition 1. Class size reduction can be effective in increasing students' academic performance in those who are in the early elementary grades rather than in the late elementary grades. The proof is as follows. Deviation of individual ability to understand classroom teaching in the early elementary grades is small compared to deviation in the late elementary grades, because individual accumulation of knowledge about each subject is not large. Therefore, learning that focuses on students with an average rate of understanding can be effective in the early elementary grades rather than in the late elementary grades. In addition, a small-sized class is amenable to multiple ways of teaching, such as adapting interactive teaching or assignments that a large class cannot have. These various methods are effective for preventing deviations from becoming large. Moreover, individuals' earnestness increases when their ability to understand teaching gets closer to the average level in a classroom, because the contents in the subjects are suitable for them. Since we observe that less deviation from the average level in understanding and high earnestness increases the value of human capital from equation 1, the effects of class size reduction tend to be larger in the early elementary grades. Proposition 2. Class size reduction can be effective for those who have poor learning environments. The proof is as follows. Class size reduction can improve the level of the individual learning environment because the teacher and the classroom can easily grasp the individual learning environment in the classroom of smaller size. This will help the school to give the students and their parents some valid advice to improve the learning environment directly or support the students whose learning environments are poor. Moreover, better learning environments increase individual earnestness toward study. Since equation 2 shows that good individual learning environments and earnestness improve the value of human capital, we deduce that class size reduction can be more effective for those who have poor learning environments. Proposition 3. The optimal class size is small while introducing the policy, and the class size grows larger with time. The proof is as follows. When students start to learn, there is a possibility that some students' learning environments are weak. Therefore, equation 10 is satisfied by class size reduction because it helps the learning environments to improve and individual earnestness toward studying increases. Moreover, since the deviation of students' ability to understand teaching from the average level in the classroom is narrow for the first time and students' earnestness is high, class size reduction shows effectiveness. As long as the value of EI and PI increase, the optimal class size becomes small. On the contrary, the marginal rate of improvement of individual learning environments becomes low, and students' understanding largely deviates over time. In this case, students' earnestness toward study becomes low, and the effects of class size reduction become small. Therefore, the optimal class size increases with time. In this study, we have two motivations: examine the effects of class size reduction theoretically and obtain 3 propositions. We believe that this is the first model to include the level of individual involvements and the deviation of individual understanding from the average level in a classroom for considering the impacts of class size reduction. We hope a clarifying mechanism contributes to realize the optimal class size reduction in the future. I would like to finish this presentation. Thank you for listening.